what I did is I took a functioning project from a student who passed phase 2, and then I sent it to Demetrio and let him, clone it and kind of familiarize himself with it. And then I wrote up a few challenges based on what I saw in the code. So the idea is to make these slightly larger and more difficult than what you would actually be asked for in a phase 2 assessment, just because we don't want to have something that's too representative of what you would actually have happen, but just something that kind of gets the feel of what that's like. Because one of the challenges, of course, in React is when you're doing live coding, it's not typically only going to exist in one file. So you have to sort of think about the interactions between the different components. So we'll see how it goes. Does anybody have any questions about? Hi, Katie, welcome. Any questions about live coding or this sort of concept before we get started? Demetrio just finished an assessment, so he's going to take a couple of minutes and make sure he's got his brain screwed on straight. So let me just share a quick whiteboard here. I do think there's some pre-technical coding parts that go into live coding, and I just want to share them with you while we're sitting here waiting. So these are non-technical components to live coding, and they're really, I think, bigger skills that employers want to see when they're thinking about hiring you or hiring any candidate. So the first one is the clarification phase. And the clarification phase can happen through questions, but also through paraphrasing and kind of a walkthrough of the deliverable. So for instance, if I say, the technical challenges for you to build a form, it's going to collect some inputs, and then it's going to have this output. You might try to, I always think of like using an example, like imagining what the input might look like, and then imagining what would happen, and using the actual page to kind of say, well, I would expect to see this result and this result and this result based on that input. So what clarification shows is that you and the assessor are on the same page. And the reason, of course, that that's important is because in technical spaces, when you have shared problems, the first step is, if the problem is being handed off to somebody else, the first step is to make sure that they get the problem. And, often there can be miscommunication in the very initial handoff of, okay, this is the deliverable that you need to go fix. So a really good employee, a really good part of a team, is going to spend some time before they run off and start, doing the technical part, making sure that they really understand clearly what the deliverable needs to look like. So that's something that's worth practicing. In a test-driven development curriculum like we have, the tests kind of govern what the expectations are. But as you get into, larger and larger projects, full stack developments, where like in phase 4 and phase 5, you're creating your own deliverables. It's important to kind of think about, like, what am I trying to create? What does it look like? And then as you see deliverables handed to you from other people, and the main place that this happens is in the live coding, it's important that you practice sort of talking about, how do I make sure I understand what the task is and that we're on the same page in terms of what I need to do. Hey, Demetrio, I'm just walking through a couple non-technical pieces here, and you're welcome to chime in. Just was talking about clarification and the importance of that as part of the student's process in live coding.
Yeah. I don't have anything to chime in right away, but
Cool.
I'm more than willing to give feedback as soon as I hear something.
Sure. And then the second part is the pseudocoding, and the pseudocoding is this construction of action items. and it's non-technical. So you're not worrying too much about, how you're going to accomplish something so much as what you're going to accomplish. And I've been thinking a lot about pseudocoding because I've been doing a lot of assessments, and I still see the students that I'm assessing, generally speaking, not that fluent with the concept of pseudocoding. So I think a lot about how to teach it, how to explain it, how to help students kind of wrap their head around it. And I think there's actually a lot more gray area than when I first was sort of thinking about it and talking about it, because how much you write and when you write pseudocode are really kind of individual choices. But I think the real value of pseudocode is twofold. One, it helps you create a blueprint for what you're going to do, so that as you kind of are working through a hard problem and you're stressed out and you're like, you kind of lose yourself in the rabbit hole, you can always go back and look at your blueprint and say, okay, this is where I was knocking out these problems. This is what I need to accomplish. And then the other part is, again, more of a sales point. It's like, how do I show an assessor, an interviewer, that I understand how to break a problem apart, even if I don't have the technical skills? You may be asked questions in technical interviews where you don't actually possess the technical skills to solve that problem, but you can still show the person that you understand how to break a general problem apart. And that has value, because people are always going to be willing to provide you with the training that you need for the specific job that you're going to do. But the sort of general understanding of good problem solving approaches is invaluable in terms of bringing somebody onto the team. All right. So I've got, as I said, I've got a challenge for Demetrio. He's going to share his screen, and then I'm going to present the challenge to him verbally. I'm almost going to stick it in chat. I just prefer to do that, and I generally recommend the students copy and paste the challenge in words somewhere into the code where they want to get started. Different assessors and interviewers will do it different ways, but I like to just have the words be out there in writing. And then I'm going to kind of let Demetrio take the reins and go for it. Anything to add on the non-technical parts that I think I missed, or that you wanted to kind of hit?
No, I think these are definitely two pieces that I would definitely instruct anyone to definitely focus on. One additional piece is that as you're clarifying and pseudocoding, make sure you're always testing too. Don't just code away, don't just clarify, test along the way, so that, hey, is this actually showing up before I keep doing all the other steps that I'm trying to do?
Oh, I think that's huge. And I always say small step validations, because I think it shows two things. It shows your critical thinking about that process of validating, that it's not enough to just write code, but you want to sort of prove it, test your hypotheses. And when you do it in small steps, you kind of limit the zone of error in terms of like, where do I need to look for the problem? Because that can be very stressful if you write a lot of code and then there's a problem and then you're like, oh my God, where do I begin to unpack this? So that's a great additional point. Okay, let's do it.
All right.
Share your screen and I'll pull up the first challenge. I have two challenges, just in case the first one is, too easy peasy.
Well, who knows? Maybe I'll be the bad student today. Maybe I'll be the good. We'll see which one I am.
Okay. So you've got a nice little recipe app, and there's actually two recipe pages. And I want you to add a new controlled form on your the search new recipe page that takes in a max number of minutes and filters the new recipes based on that constraint.
Okay, so let me make sure that I understand this correctly. So you're asking me to have a new controlled form, and I'm just going to copy what you put into the chat here. It's not looking great already, so let me go ahead and just change the view here to word wrap so I can see it all in one thing. I'm going to comment it out. Okay, so you want me to create a new controlled form on my search for new recipes page that takes in a max number of minutes and filters the new recipes based on that constraint. So I'm basically, am I working with my own filters that I have here as well? Probably. So, okay.
I mean, I haven't thought much about how it should interact with the other inputs. And so I would kind of leave that as a add-on to make sure that they can all kind of collaborate together. You can imagine what I want to see is just if you type a number into this new input, it will immediately kind of, and then there would have to be a submit, because if you type the number 3 and then 0, like I'd want to wait until you said this is the number of minutes and then do a search or a filter.
Okay. All right. That sounds great. So I already have a filtering system here. It kind of lends from, I believe, up here in main container. Let me double check that. Yeah, so it has select meal, select status of recipe, select effort level. So I already have kind of this basis of, by the way, anybody who's chiming in here, this is not my own code. So I'm also figuring this out as we're going. And it looks like I have, somebody already has the time effort here. And I wonder, ready in minutes from the API data. Let's see, let me make sure I'm not. So yeah, effort level, search new recipes, prep time. So this is more, looks like a form kind of situation. So that's not quite what I'm looking for. I'm looking for probably the recipe containers in which I'm trying to show the recipe, and based on the effort level, show the time. So, okay. All right. Oh, I accidentally deleted something. Cool. So is this going to be based on my recipes or searching new recipes?
It's going to be in the search new recipes.
Search new recipes. All right. Cool. So if that's the search new recipes, I have let me double check where search new recipes is. I believe these are what the routes are. Recipe box, recipes. So it's recipes. Okay, cool. So here's the search. The search passes down from up here and from main container. Main container is taking from app. Okay. So let me start off with a couple things. So I already asked myself, where's my data, which is coming from app. It passes down into things like recipe container, which is the route of // recipes. And this is where I want the result to be at. So like recipe container is where I'm showing the results. All right, cool. Additionally, I know that I'm going to need a new component that is a form that takes in a number and will help filter the results in my recipe container based on the time entered. Now, a couple more questions I got here as edge cases. So edge cases. Am I, like, if somebody enters in kind of 10.5, should I round down? Should I round up? And I'm going to guess I'm just looking for a range based on how much effort there is versus like an exact number and less. Do you want me to do like exact number or less?
Yeah. And it doesn't matter whether it's equal, less than or equal to, or just less than. It kind of, you can decide.
Okay, so I'm going to do less than or equal to. So I want all results to be, I think I have to do it this way, less than or equal to the time inputted. So this is kind of preliminary pseudocode I'm writing out myself before I finish writing out my component. But at the very least, I'm kind of just like trying to make sure that I have an understanding of what I'm working with. Because this is not even my own code, I'm just trying to get that basis going. So first thing I got to do is create my function of challenge one. Oops. Takes in its information, returns. I need my export default, and I'm exporting default challenge one. Now I'm just writing this out. Ooh, I already got an error. Did I miswrite something? I could have miswritten something already. No, oh, that's what I did. Capital D. Oops. So I'm just writing this out because I know that overall I need this just for my boilerplate. I know I'm going to need to take in some props, and those props are probably going to be like the time state that I'm going to have above from this. Because I'm going to want it in the recipe container, I'm probably going to import my challenge one here. Now, by doing the import in here, by kind of writing out this component, everybody, I allow for the import to immediately come in once I press and enter. So it'll recognize that I already have a component called challenge one, and it'll import it for me instead of having to import first and then write this piece down here. So I'm going to bring in, I already should have my import from React here. And with import from React, I'm going to bring in use state because I know I'm going to need use state because I want the page to update as we're searching through. I probably am going to have to make some edits here with the code that's originally here. But before I get to that point, let me at least create my state and make sure I have that passing down. So I'm going to create my state of what I believe I called it is time filter. And so I'm going to have time filter. Nope, that's the wrong one I'm looking at. I'm not looking at new recipe. Const time filter and set time filter. Now, I know I'm kind of going through this fast, everyone, but overall, what I'm just writing out here for myself is just like the basics of my component. And I'm going to have it as an empty string at first. I need to pass this down here. So I need to pass this down as, I guess I'm going to do set. I'm going to do just time filter into here. I'm just trying to get my like boilerplate of code into here so that I know things are being passed down. This is not really even me fully coding if I had to state that to everyone here. This is me just like passing things down because I know I need them kind of the same way that we'll pass down divs. Now I clearly have an error happening here already off the bat. So let me open up my dev tools and see what's the issue here. So it's kind of complaining about a lot of things happening here. Let's see, cannot read, function is not iterable at recipe container line 6. Well, it shouldn't be. Use state should be fine there. So what is my issue here? Time filter, set time filter, I have a const. I have set time filter here. I'm bringing it down here. What am I doing? Do I just want to go null? Is it complaining just like, let's see. Oh my. Got a lot of warnings there, but I'm mostly looking for my errors. So cannot read property of undefined filter. Is it probably because my application might have accidentally gotten reset here? Who knows? Okay, so all right, so it might have been that I just, as I was typing everything in, things were getting refreshed, and I just had to double check. That's something everybody should be aware of, because React is also reacting to, like, especially if you have autosave, it's reacting directly to your code being updated. At times, you're going to lose your data as you're running through. And so you're kind of accidentally just losing some of that, like, maybe I'm losing results here, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, results don't exist. It doesn't mean your code is necessarily broken. It just means that we just need to, start from step one in our code. There's ways to fix this. If I had the time to fix this in front of everyone, I would. There's plenty of things in here for me to refactor, but I'm not focused on that right now. I'm focused on my challenge. So let me not dilly-daddle. So I haven't inserted any return here, and I know I want a form. So I'm just going to actually go in here and automatically put a form in here. And I know for a form, here's some basic stuff that I need. I need an on submit. I need the handle submit for that on submit. So let me go ahead and create that. Don't forget, if you're using arrow functions, to go about it in an arrow function kind of way. If you're using regular functions, use it as a regular function. I know I'm going to have an event when it comes to an on submit, so I need to make sure that I'm passing that down. And because all I'm doing is passing handle submit, I don't need to go anything crazy. I can just pass E directly to it by calling on my callback function inside of the on submit like that. So I'm talking a lot. I don't know if anybody's understanding me. If anybody needs clarifying questions, wants to ask anything, by all means, go ahead and ask. So I need now an input, which I should probably make sure to get that tag in there. That input is going to have text. And I know that I'm working with time as a frame, and that's usually an integer, but I'm going to work with it as a text first. So let's see, type is going to equal text. Value is going to equal to time filter, because I passed this down specifically for this option, and I'm going to have an on change because I need to have this on change happen every time I type into my input. So handle change is what I'm going to call this function. It's kind of a basic name, nothing complicated. And I'm going to go ahead and create my handle change. Now I need an event here for this handle change because I am relying on the component itself, because I eventually want e.target.value, right? Anytime I'm typing into there, I want to just represent that. I want to be able to see that. And in order to see the value of my input, I need to do e.target.value. E.target is just the HTML element of input. So once I do value, the property of input, I should be able to get that. But I'm not there yet. I am still building out my boilerplate code. So I got a button here that I'm going to have, and it's going to probably say search based on time. I'm not really sure what I want it to say, but that's what I'm going to have it. Preliminary. Were you saying something? Was anyone saying anything? If not, I'll keep going. So this button's automatically going to be connected to my form based on my on submit. And I'm getting a warning because my form is currently uncontrolled. Shouldn't be, because right now I should be handling everything here, but that's probably because I've just passed the value in here, but I haven't passed in the handle change. So I need to bring in my other prop that I also passed into here and set time filter, right? And again, I haven't done any real coding of solving the problem here. I'm only doing the basics of bringing in my forms information and all the data here. Because recipe container has the state here, and it's just being passed down, I'm just making sure I have all this stuff. The handle submit should go with your on submit anytime I'm creating the form. Anytime you're creating an input, you want to just make sure you have a handle change. And I'm just making sure I have these passing down. So I have the set time filter in here. And you can see here that I actually get my search based on time, but it's a little upset on ordering these a little bit funky. If I had more time on working on CSS, I'd probably work on that. But the current moment, I'm not going to focus on that. So let's see, I'm going to clear all this because probably some of that is going to get eliminated a little bit. I'm going to open up in my console. Let's see, that should be in here. I would like to have pulled out my components. I'm wondering why I don't have those in here. Let's see. All right, come in here. Huh. Looks like I don't have the React dev tools in here. So I'm doing this old school JavaScript console log style. So I'm going to want to set time filter, right, to kind of information that's being put into here. So e.target.value. And just so I can kind of see that, I'm going to take, I'm going to just put this into as a function. I believe this should work. So as I type in here, I should get my value in there. And I know this console log will probably not represent exactly what I'm typing in there, but if I do time filter in here, so every time I type, I get the word, but one letter behind from where I want it. Totally fine, no problem. So the handle change is working. Now I got to work on the handle submit. So it's only when the handle submit happens that I want two things to happen. I want to set time filter to be an empty string again. And I want to probably pass back up to, do I need to pass it back up? I have state technically, so maybe I'm running. So I already have state up here in my recipe container, right? And so when I go ahead and type anything in here, it should be available up here. So I'm just getting my handle filtering to happen here. And it honestly doesn't need the event, and it probably doesn't need for me to pass anything back up. It just needs to be triggered up here. And so if that's the case, if it just needs to be triggered, and when it gets clicked on, this should trigger. So I just want to console log at this point now time filter just to make sure I have it to work with. So now I click on this and it didn't console log for me. Oh, that's because I didn't pass down the function. So don't forget to pass down your functions. I'm going to pass down handle filter. Pass it down here. Since I passed it down to here, my submit will have handle filter as a function. And I'm passing handle filter here. All right, cool. So now when I type that in, click, boom, my console log has now officially worked up here in handle filter. Doesn't seem like anybody has questions about what I've done so far, so I'm going to keep on going. So the current issue that I have is I'm currently in a predicament where I have my filter and map like kind of already happening for my like search here. So if I was to do cabbage here, it's already filtering for me, and it's filtering on already kind of input items. So I don't want it to immediately, I want to just be able to change these recipes as they're going through. And I obviously only want that to be triggered when we are searching. So let's see if I can make this edit here. So first things first, I'm going to want to kind of const recipes the display. I'm going to actually kind of redo it a little bit. And I'm going to take this line and put that here. So that's going to move this here. And now I got this map, which will trigger down here based on filtered handle, based on that handle filter, maybe based on what I want to do. Maybe I wanted to trigger on a true or false for something. So, okay. So let's see. Const. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out. So right now, what I'm having as an issue is that, I'm mapping over this at the current moment. But I either want to map over this or I want to map over just the base based on what the time is. So like another handled filter. So maybe what I can do is, sorry, I'm taking a second because I'm trying to figure out the solve here. Const, return recipes here. And okay, so here's another clarifying question I'm going to have, Ben.
Mhm.
So I've considered for myself that, like, yeah, okay, I'm filtering the results based on that number I'm putting in eventually. The next edge case that I have here is that, do you want me to filter also when I'm already filtering? Or do you want me to filter only when, like, only on the full search results?
Yeah, I think to start, it would satisfy me if we just did it on the full, like the other input is not being used.
Okay.
I think if you finish the first version, then if you want to think about how to do it on top of the other filter, that would be cool, but not necessary to solve the challenge.
Yeah, it's just like one's on change and one's on submit. And I'm just having a little bit of like how that's going to connect. But okay, if I'm going to return one array or another array, I can handle that pretty easily. So what I'm going to do here is handle filter. We either return null or it's going to return an array. So maybe what I'm going to do here is, all right, so I'm going to probably do like the same kind of API recipes dot base URI dot filter, and then kind of copy what they're doing here. But now instead of result dot name, I'm doing result dot time, I'm guessing is the object name here. But I actually don't know what my objects look like at all. It seems like effort is the information here, and it's called dot result dot ready in minutes. So let's see, less than equal to, and I'm going to have to parse int my time filter. Since originally it's a string, I had to parse int it. And this should get me a result. So const time filter, time filtered. Kind of reusing some names here, and it might get confusing in the future, but let me just console log time filtered. So recipes probably are not showing up at the moment, but if I do 10, and I type that in, ooh, well, it's not supposed to be a function. API, oh, I guess it's supposed to be base. Ooh. Okay, so this broke again because I have to go back here, search new recipes. When I type in 30, I'm hoping to get something here. Dot filter is not a function. Huh, interesting. Is it supposed to be, that's why. API recipes dot results dot filter. Yeah. So I refresh this, and of course, just did a quick break. Do 30, click on search. Okay, so I got 38 results. Let's try 20. Okay, and I'm getting less results. Let's try 10. Okay, and let me double check that information. So ready in 10 minutes, ready in 10 minutes, ready in 5 minutes, awesome. And ready in 10. Okay, so it looks like that filter is actually working. So now that I actually get something here, if time filtered dot length is greater than 0, I want it to return time filtered. Otherwise, I want it to return null. And now when I'm doing this, I'm going to do a handle filter. Nope, not handle filtered here. Well, actually, I could potentially do that here, but nope, that would break it. Okay, so I probably have to do a true or false statement. That's probably what's going to have to happen. So that's probably going to have to be here. I'm going to probably have to do a true or false statement. Show time. Set show time. Initially, it's going to be false. And what I'm going to do here is I either want it to return these recipes based on one aspect here. So return recipes. And in this map, what I'm going to have it do is if show time is true, if show time is true, then I want it to do not, let's see. How do I want to go about this? Maybe, this is what I wanted to do. So not here, but here. All right, so show time is going to be, if it's true, it's going to be time filtered. And if it's false, it will go to that. Recipes to display. And I'm just going to actually separate this out one more time to filter category filter. And I'm going to just take this piece over here. And let's see if category filtered here. Boom. So now recipes to displayed is either going to be time filtered the array or category filtered array. And it will return based on that, and return recipes should show based on one of those. And the filter is not defined. Yes. I did change that, didn't I? So the handle filter just has to do okay, so the handle filter just needs to do set showtime to true. And this is just preliminary. This is probably not going to be perfect, but it should get this piece done. So I'm going to do 40 minutes and, So what happened? Let's see what happened here indeed. I don't want to give up at this point. So this console log should have triggered. I'm going to console log recipes to display or return recipes when I console log here. So keeps doing that. Okay, so I'm going to type in 30. Do that. So it should have showed something. 20. Oh, interesting. Interesting. So we are getting an array back. But for some reason, I'm not getting the proper array that I want back. So if showtime is false, we're showing category filtered. If it's true, it's showing time filtered. But I'm not getting anything until, let's see, why is that the case? So I get something originally. When I type, nothing happens. I click, it tells me I should be getting 100 results previously. So what is the case here? If I type in 11. So, okay, so I'm having an issue where the state is one piece behind. Let's see, why is that the case? So all the handle filter is doing is setting showtime. Showtime should be true, changes this. Recipes to display should be mapped over. And this should be triggered by state, since it's a state-derived variable, and should be able to switch this. So what could be the issue? Do I have too many states? Is that the issue? Maybe I just turn this into a function. I don't like this at all. But if time filtered dot length is greater than 0, return time filtered, else return category filter. And if I just change this to recipes to display, actually, it was already recipes to display, but now I've turned it into a function. Let's see if that fixes anything. Yep, because set show time should not be defined anymore. Where is set show time? Oh. The submission piece is what's confusing me here. I'm getting like, I'm not quite getting what I want to trigger here. It's because I'm stuck in the piece where like I'm in between, like, okay, I have to either submit or it's an on change. And that's causing me to like go through these two different things. And they're two different events, but they're both supposed to trigger on the same piece.
Right. I mean,
So
you don't really want it to start filter as you're typing 30 minutes. You don't want it to be filtering on the 3. You want it to be filtering when you say, okay, I'm ready to submit this number.
yeah, the problem that I'm having is that the search is also triggering at the same time. And so it's like either I have an on change or I have an on submit happening, but I can't have both almost.
I wonder if the set showtime was very close to correct, but there was something happening in the on submit on the component itself that was getting in the way of seeing what you wanted to see.
Okay, I can take a look at that. So on the on submit, I have the handle filter coming down, which sets the show time. The on change is working. I mean, maybe
But what happens right before handle filter?
right before handle filter is a set. Oh, maybe that would be confusing if that's what's happening. But let's try it out. Maybe it is the set time filter. All right, so let's try it again. Oh, yeah, you're right. It was because I was clearing the thing. But now that, so now when I don't have anything there,
It doesn't come back.
it doesn't come back. But I got the first objective piece to work. So now I need to have it switch when it doesn't have anything. So if time filter, and I just want to check if time filter then if it's true, then set show time. This won't fix it for afterwards. now it's the on change piece that needs to have show time returned back to false.
Seemed like a good idea. I mean, basically, if the submission shows an empty string, if the time filter is an empty string, then you know you want to be looking back at the original list.
Yeah. So if time filter is an empty string, we want to set show time to, that's not how you set show time, to false. Otherwise, if it's not an empty string, we're setting it to true. So now when we plug in 20, we submit, and I erase. It's strange that when I erase it, it just immediately disappears anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to stop there because I want to leave a few minutes for kind of reflection and questions from other people. A couple of things that I noticed, you didn't use a snippet tool to set up your component. Is that intentional, or you recommend people don't use a snippet tool, or you just don't have it installed in your own VS Code?
As far as boilerplate code, sometimes it just helps me make sure that I have it. But I recommend snippet tools when people need to use it. It's not, I'm of the opinion that it doesn't make too much of a difference either way.
Yeah. I liked how it was right at the beginning, but you were setting up your component and you had the capital D in default, and you were paying attention to the fact that you had kind of finished some code, and then but the file was red. So you were using the internal clues from VS Code to kind of stop and pay attention to what had already been written, right? And then again, that connects to the validation in short steps. Like if you're getting clues, I mean, obviously, if you're in the middle of writing code, you're not paying attention to whether they think there's a syntax error or not. But if you finish writing some code and there's some error signals, you should pay attention to those.
Yeah.
So in terms of talking out loud, do you think that's something that students should develop, or is it just something that, as an instructor, you get more comfortable with? Do you think it's an actual like problem solving strategy, or keeping yourself calm and focused strategy?
All of the above. Talking out loud is that process where, like, if Ben at any point thought like my pattern was maybe off from what I was originally, like, off from the basis of like, hey, like that doesn't actually make sense, he could have interjected, right? He could have at least at any point been like, maybe rethink that. Like even at that point where like my handle filter may have been correct, but I was messing something up on my challenge one JSX component by having that empty string kind of for that post form situation. He let me know, like maybe look back to that. And that's just like during even technical interviews, just being able to talk out loud and riffing with somebody is always going to be helpful. You're never going to be told like don't talk at all. And for the purposes of your code challenge and any technical interviews, it's just helpful to get to like be comfortable in that voice that you have and talking out loud, and then eventually getting information back from other people.
Yeah. Does anybody have questions? I got a couple more, but I want to open space for students to ask questions.
Yeah, there was a lot of code written here, guys, and I'm sure a lot of it wasn't, I don't know if it's the best answer to what would have happened here. I think there would have been some other decisions I would have made, maybe even bringing in a use effect, now that I think about it. But, there's a lot that you can ask here, and like why I made each decision here.
Well, I think it's important to remember in live coding that you're not looking for the best solution. You're just trying to, chip away at the problem and make progress to solve it. And then if you solve it and you have extra time and you want to kind of circle back and think about how this could have been done better, you can do that. But I think sometimes thinking about the best way or the right way can be debilitating to students just making progress towards a solution. Can you speak to like the controlled form and whether, putting the state at the parent component versus on the component, does it matter from your perspective?
So from my perspective on a controlled form, it depends on how it's being utilized. So let's take, for example, this form specifically, where it has an influence on some other component here that eventually we're going to see. I want my filter then to have its state for this change to be a parent of both the filter function, the filter component, and whatever it's going to be changing on. So in this case, the parent of my challenge one was recipe container, right? And I wanted to have an influence on these, right? The returned recipes. So I had it purposely be up here because it was going to influence it. It's the parent of both all the returned recipes and my challenge as two different components in a sense. But in the cases of like a form where I'm trying to add in a new recipe, I did notice that this person who created this had their states all come from above. And I would disagree with this specifically because it's only this new recipe that should be in charge of handling any part of adding this new recipe, right? So you don't want it to be influenced. You don't necessarily need it to be influenced by other components. So in this case, I would have moved the state directly here.
Gotcha.
Because only this component's in charge of it.
Yeah, that makes sense as a way of kind of deciding where it belongs. Hey, Christina. Yep, we're gonna record. I mean, this has been recorded. We're gonna make sure we paste this in the phase 2 channel. And again, this is harder than what is typically asked. Demetrio, correct me if I'm wrong. In the live coding for phase 2 assessments, I wanted to make sure it had some similarities, but I didn't want it to be too close to what a person might actually receive. And I wanted to challenge Demetrio. So
yeah, and this was a good challenge, especially since the last time that you gave me that challenge, I wasn't quite like I was prepared, but it didn't throw me for a loop. But in this case, yeah, this is a little bit more difficult than you would expect. You could expect us to ask you to put in a filter or a search. That is a possibility, but not to this degree where you're handling an on submit and a handle change kind of discrepancy at the same time. That requires a lot of different pieces working at the same time, and it's while it's going to show us that hey, like they do have an understanding of React, it starts getting into the realm of more advanced React knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay.
One last question from Andrew, and then we're going to head out. Since you were working with an on submit and an on change, is there a way to make the on submit fire off in the on change? Would that have made this easier?
Good question. So what I kind of came up with the solution a little bit after this is like, okay, I got everything to run, right? The next piece I would have done was a use effect. I would have had a use effect trigger based on what's being inside of the, like, I would have had the dependency be on the time filter. So, I would have use effect, trigger the use effect through a callback function. And then as the dependency array for this, I would have had time filter be kind of the dependency. And what this could have done for me is, because both are kind of simultaneously happen, I need to check first if time filter has anything inside of it, right? Basically any string. if time filter, then I'm, doing one. Otherwise, I'm doing kind of something else, right? Which is what I kind of did with showtime down here. So it could have been that, I could have set showtime here to false if it was empty. And then, if time filter had anything in it, if parse int time filter, I would have done, so if parse int time filter is greater than 0, because we obviously don't want recipes that don't have 0, then set show time to true. And that would have allowed for maybe even ignoring this handle filter a little bit. Maybe.
Yeah.
This still would have required some finicking and changing around, but putting it in the on change itself of the kind of category filtering might have led to some other difficulties, because we're constantly changing anytime we type into the search. We have to make a moment when we want things to be changed back, and I think that might have required a button, more than anything, to like now put it back to false, being like, okay, go back to regular search results.
Yeah,
I think that making it part of the on change would have been difficult, unless Ben would have asked me to have it as an on change and switch between either time or category or name of the recipe. Then that would have been kind of a different thing, where I would have had like checkboxes, and depending on which checkbox is clicked is how I'm searching through it, and then it would have been an on change.